Hello, I'm Elia. Welcome to Inventing Construction. We are going to talk in today's episode about the role of the information manager. We will explain what it is, specifically in the context of construction, and how has it evolved in the last years, how it is going to evolve in the coming years, and how does it compare specifically in the construction industry in Denmark to other countries internationally. And to talk about this, who best than an information manager herself, Andrijana, here with us today. Please, Andrijana, introduce yourself.
Thank you. You already mentioned my name is Andrijana, and I work within the architecture, engineering, construction industry, based here in Denmark, in a Danish consultancy for engineering services called NIRAS. And yes, I work with information management.
Yeah. And what is an information manager?
Well, if you try to find out online about this role, it's many different descriptions. Mm-hmm. So if we go to the roots, what is information management? Gathering data, and then processing it into information. Yeah. It's from Wikipedia. Yeah. But essentially, information managers, they provide or they distribute the information timely, mm-hmm. at the right time for the right purpose. Right. Essentially, among many other different, it's kind of a wide role, I would say.
Is this a new role we invented in construction, or it's been there from other industries? I wonder.
It's actually something that we named recently, mm-hmm. Something like 15 years ago, when Denmark, for example, started to mandate digital information management. Mm-hmm. It was back in 2007, actually, the first one. So everybody started to see the need and importance of the information management role. When the new mandate came, it was 2013, then this role was defined, information manager, or in Danish, IKT-leder.
Mm-hmm. I presume the requirement was there from a long time ago, but I presume they identified that the requirement was there, it was not fulfilled, there was a need for someone to actually make it happen, and that will be the figure of the information manager. It's not that new then, the role as such. We are talking about more than a decade.
And if we talk about information, like in a broad spectrum, mm-hmm. there has always been a need to manage information.
Yeah, in all industries,
in one way
right?
or another. But now we do this digitally, and we prove information management.
I think it's important in this regard that we always had the need for it. We do it, but with this specific team member role, we also have a responsible to ensure that happens and that the requirement is fulfilled.
Exactly. There's actually something interesting about this. We probably come to the next question about my background.
Yes.
Because I have a background in architecture, initially, education. And then I shifted a little bit. I got a bachelor's in architectural technology. Mm-hmm. And then through my experience, I kind of became fond of this role, information management, because it kind of hit me that information management is something that our industry really craves for. And my journey in Denmark started in 2003, which was the year when something called, it was an initiative. It was a research and developing initiative called, mm-hmm. digital construction. So the whole wave kind of started to lift, and the tide was there. Several years later, after I gained some experience, I was educated, I read a book. And it's Tipsha Lerner who wrote it. Mm-hmm. Actually, the name of the book is The Witch of Colonia.
Okay.
But yeah, my favorite quote there was that information is like the mortar that can both build and destroy empires.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I always remember this.
I can understand why, yeah.
Information, if it's not correct or if it's not correctly allocated and so on, it can be devastating for the projects.
It's very dangerous indeed for projects at all levels, right? And in the context of construction, misleading information is worse than taking non-informed decisions, right? At least you made that up. But when you are basing your decisions in information that you think is correct, is factual, and actually is misleading, I think that's very dangerous.
I also kind of think it's always nice to remember this because the book was published in 2003. So it all makes sense.
Maybe they drafted the mandate, a little bit inspired with that one.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's fun that the book probably has nothing to do with construction, but in this specific quote, they mention materials and like. So I like that one. Yeah, it's a good one.
You can actually meet it. I've seen it on some different articles.
Okay, so you were not the only one inspired by it, and hopefully it's more like many in listening to us also can resonate with it.
Definitely.
Since it officially became a role itself in the project's information manager, how have you seen it evolving since then?
This is, like you say, amazing to work in Denmark because we do have this role defined. We've had it for a number of years now. And of course, it's evolving. In the beginning, it was different software we used. It was a different approach. There was not so much focus on data as it was on the digital representation, like for the 3D modeling. This was our focus mainly. So it's in the recent years that we began to focus on data and how this can be managed within projects for all the stakeholders and during the life cycle of the project from design to operation. So I think in a way, our role is much more valid. It's like much more strong now than it was for several years ago.
It was maybe not evident because data was generated without context. It was not information yet. We were focusing, or the process was focused on 3D representation, as you said, but not that many stakeholders were using that data. The only stakeholders using the data, the 3D representations were the designers themselves. So they had the power, or they were empowered to shape the geometry as they needed for their own purpose. Yeah. I think that as new stakeholders jump into the chain of usage of the information generated in projects, as more stakeholders are part of the common data environment and they start producing and utilizing and linking and connecting this data together, I think it's become more evident that all that needs to be managed because, if we have total freedom, even though there is a contractual document, which in this case, I presume it will be the BIM execution plan that sets the guidelines and the requirements for the information, naming conventions, what can be generated, how revisions work, etc. But that is there, and very few times I've seen people asking for a BIM execution plan when they are not part of the design team. They are still members of the common data environment. They will read and generate information, but they are not aware that that information is regulated. And there are specific requirements. So I guess that even though there was someone managing it, it was not evident that something was failing. And now it is a need and a very important practice to put everything in order, to put everything cohesive and current.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The flow of data for all stakeholders, for all the phases in the project, and moving from this proprietary way of working with data to interoperable working with data. You mentioned the CDE.
Common data environment.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking BIM, and BIM requires collaboration of all the stakeholders, the ones that produce and the ones that consume. Can you explain what makes it so transformative?
As you mentioned, yes, BIM is transformative. It's transforming the industry, but not only technologically, but also our mindset. We have shifted now from working with the design, not the design, but the construction phases of a project, working separately. We're beginning now to
disjoint.
Yes, to join them and to make the flow because we're working together. And many other roles we are defining, like, for example, the information management role, the quantity surveyor role. When do we involve all the parties? That's what I think is very valuable in BIM and the way it's transforming our industry. I have another quote. I have to use it. It's from Platon, the photographer. BIM is chaos. It's not about BIM he talked about, but I love the way that he formed it. We need to make this into a beautiful cosmos. Why? Because information, data which is scattered, data which is in overload and irrelevant to the projects, we're moving away from that. We are actually processing information that are relevant for the projects, and this information is timely, like I said earlier, and the phases are merging together so we can work together.
It's the changing mindset towards circularity, right? So we have recycling, we have circularity of economy, circularity of the building materials, circularity of information in this case. And the only way to close the loop, or basically to join each of the stages and then eventually close the loop, is to actually make them transferable and connected. It's not about starting from scratch in each stage, but actually try to utilize as much everything that has been produced in the previous, all the efforts, all the work done in previous stages, and then basically utilizes as your foundations, and then build on top of that, rather than changing from one silo to another and then start again. Same applies. This will be transitioning between phases or between stages, but same applies between disciplines in the same stage, in the same phase, right? All the information that each of the disciplines produce should not be siloed, should be connected and transferable to the other disciplines for them to be able to use it and work with it.
Exactly.
So it's about the mindset of recycling and reusing Cosmos, is order from chaos. So in this case, the chaos will refer to the Babel Tower, where this the myth of everybody talking different languages. And sometimes I feel that the construction teams were like that, or the communication between teams was a little related to the Babel Tower. Could not be built because the workers could not communicate with each other. Okay. And we are not that far from there when it comes to try to understand data produced by other teams. Cannot use it, because, it's different language. Not talking language as in Danish, English, etc. It's different language as in, I don't know what you mean by this. I cannot use it. It's dangerous to use it because I don't understand it. And probably the output is not correct if I'm not utilizing your data in the proper way.
I agree.
And then in this line, the workflows had to change in BIM. How do differ these workflows and from the traditional methods, and what are the advantages of working with this different mindset, this different approach?
Yes, open workflows, open BIM, interoperability between different software, managing information regardless of which software different stakeholders use. This is like the aim. We are very well on the way to do this. And actually, we already have some examples. We already work with utilizing the power of open BIM.
To me, open workflows is the equal of a common language ground, basically. So you don't require to have a specific software. You don't require to know specific formats or a specific programming languages or a specific understanding of a different industry to evaluate and validate if the data is correct. It will be everything is transformed to common ground, common language. Exactly. So that everybody can communicate at that level, create that connection between the stakeholders.
Yes.
All right. And can you share some examples, Andrijana, of how optimizing the model uses and the different maturity levels and information levels in projects you've worked with?
I think it's interesting you mentioned the analogy with the Babel Tower.
Yeah.
Because this project I want to share with you is it was a very interesting project because it was the first time I had encountered a silo scattering between the disciplines. It was also a very interesting assignment within the plant industry, plant design. So we had the process engineers and we had us consultants and some other stakeholders. And we did use common data environment, but somehow nobody thought of utilizing the common data environment for example, for the process engineers.
Yeah.
And so what we got out of it, we worked really hard. It was some very talented project members that I was working with. It was fascinating how everybody was interested in this. They all wanted to have information flow and between all the models, for example, in this case, but also between all the project members that are not a part of this technical design team, right? The client, how do we communicate with the client? It was very important to show them, to visualize how this factory is going to look like. Then we utilized a common data environment, and the biggest outcome was what I took with me was that a feeling of it's working, like the roads are open and the information is flowing, data is being processed in a very simple, common language, like you mentioned, and there are no obstacles, no data loss between the phases. That was also one of the things you also earlier mentioned.
I suppose, right?
Yeah, of course, up to an extent, but for that data that was required, it was not a very complex requirement, but the most important data to try and not have data loss between the phases.
It's very important, and in this experience, everybody understood that it was everybody's work and not just the work of someone who is responsible for it to actually fix everybody's problems, and that they contributed and collaborated for it to happen. I think in the end, once you have been involved in these processes, you see the value of this type of methodologies and processes, and the little bit extra work that needs to be put into, but that is rewarded by ensuring good quality data, by ensuring available data in the next phases, in your next project, because let's remember, circularity of information is you try to gather all the data for your project, but ultimately a project has a dead end, and then what you want is to actually utilize that data as well in other projects. I think there's still a little work to do in terms of silo, like remove the silo between phases, remove the silo between disciplines in each phase, and actually also look at removing the silo between projects themselves, right? So like we don't work creating all these flows into one project, but actually try to make it transferable to other projects as well, and the learnings and the data and the potential predictions from artificial intelligence when we get there, to be, as you said before, proactive and take active decisions and take active actions into the different stages to come and the tasks to come, rather than being proactive, waiting for everything to come, waiting for the information to be produced and shared and analyzed to actually take the decision. Then, like, we want to be ahead of that. That's when it's more profitable for projects in terms of reducing resources of people, hours of work, reducing efforts, because they don't need to redo. If we are constantly taking reactive decisions, a lot of work has been done already, and then you need to go back and redo again. And also in terms of economical savings as well, right? So you reduce efforts, you make optimal processes, and then you reduce as well, of course, the investment that you need into these actions by investing very little in putting order into the chaos of all your data and all your information in the project. All right. And this is very specific, of course, to Denmark, where there is a mandate, where it's regulated, where the role has been defined in a mandate. So it's not it's not something that is or was at the time a degree in university. So I'm going to be an information manager, I will take this degree in the university. The role came into the mandate before it existed in the career system in Denmark, right? But then when we look at the international panorama, where it's not mandated, where in university they don't have potentially computers, they're not working with computers, all data is generated in paper, which, don't get me wrong, data is also paper-wise. It's just not digital, so it's slower to process. But that's, there's also data generated in the analog tools or analog methods. But in internationally, where this is not mandated, where there is no like careers in university to train people into take a professional role in construction teams for this purpose. How do you see that in other countries? What is your experience when you compare?
My experience is that every time the topic comes up and we discuss this in our network, in our community, everybody's so fascinated about the countries that do mandate it, because they see it like it's really like the way out. And of course, this was the reason also why everything moved. I mean, Denmark is among the first runners in this field. And you mentioned also like some places, they work with the analog way of managing information, but still it's managing information. So the first thing is that I think many countries now do see this example, both from Denmark and the UK and so on. But for individuals, it's a bit different because individuals can still advance in the field and work internationally. And this is what we also see in our community, that we are very different. We come from different backgrounds, but we want the same. So the whole understanding of this, how this information should flow in a project, no matter if it's analog or digital, we want the same outcome.
It's a process, and of course, digital will be more optimal, will be faster reactions, etc., and it will be optimal. But there is always a starting point, and in Denmark it was mandated, and then people internationally says like, but here we don't have this mandate, trying to push the responsibility to the government or the institutions. But like, I think that it was necessary to create a mandate to actually encourage projects to bring this role and bring these processes and methods. But now it is proved it has benefits. So I don't think it's necessary to mandate something to force people to implement these in projects when the main beneficiary is going to be the project itself, or the developer, or the different stakeholders, the people producing information to be reused in their next projects. So there's no need to actually mandate it, or the way I see it, when it is proved that it has benefits.
I still think that the public sector would benefit from that, because there's a lot of public projects, and we know how that works. I don't know in all the countries how it works, but we do have some knowledge on how things can get very slow.
Yeah, it's a starting point, and like it's proving being fruitful. That's also.
Yes. But still, you would be surprised, like some countries, they still don't have the maturity and understanding of what BIM actually is. So even though it was proved here and generally here in the Nordic countries, we still meet this need for upskilling and the whole awareness of what BIM is.
Do you see any other challenges or opportunities on the role of information management?
Our role is challenged daily, of course, mainly because of the technological advancements. The technology takes these leaps, and it will take in the future.
We want them. We want it to do faster.
Exactly. But apart from the technological part, there is also the non-technical skills. We get challenged on this. Communication skills, experience, of course, it's very important here. But on the other hand, we need to, again, shift the mindset to this continuous learning, to be proactive and to be resilient. I just wanted to research and personal development to continue through continuous learning to to reach this level of to beat the challenges.
It's a challenge, but also an opportunity, especially for curious people and driven people that want change. Is the role is there, but of course, and it's mature. But because the technology and the approaches constantly changed in that regard, there's constant need to be renewing and being up to date. So for curious people, it might not be foreseen as a challenge, but also as an opportunity of actually
Definitely
setting the direction of the role. And in that line, I think I see as one challenge the lack of maybe education for it, especially internationally in other countries. There is courses, and it starts being part of the study programs in some of the Nordic countries. Of course, because we need the role. So that's another opportunity. There is a huge need for this role in the construction projects, but in other countries where it's not part of the study programs, some of those people might end up in the role by facing it in the project, curious about it, self-learning, going abroad to study it. But that also has the challenge of not being homogeneous approaches. So when one self-learn, one does things as one feels, it's the right way to do it, but maybe not the same way as other information managers might be doing that. So we lose that homogeneous approach and methodology on how to implement the professional knowledge of this role into projects. If everybody does it as one feels is the best way to work with that. So I see that as a challenge in this regard.
Yes, I agree.
For all those that want to self-learn or pursue a career as professional information managers, what advice would you give them?
You should definitely look into your technical skills. Of course, we do have a set of skills that we need to master, and we need to be digitally proficient. So this is one thing. But again, I will mention the non-technical skills. That's also something that's very important. Something not necessarily that's taught in an institution. So focus on this, and maybe 3 things. Be resilient.
Trial and error sometimes.
Trial and error, but this resilience in preparing for change, be ready for change, advocate for change, and use it in your collaborations, in your organization, and so on.
Be constant out of your comfort zone because you need to.
Definitely, yes. Be result-oriented. Work on this. Quality. Exceed the expectations from the clients. And lastly, but most importantly, once again, continuous learning. Be proactive in be curious. The one you mentioned, research, implement new technologies in your own workflows.
And it's important what you said there is you need to have, it's not only about studying or getting trained into a professional career. There is some things that need to be natural to you, right? If you are like my mom, I love her a lot, but every time she takes the controller for the TV breaks, So if you are one of those people that are, like technology is against you, maybe, of course, it's a role it's a role that is very much leaning into the technology side of it. So you need to be naturally good at embracing technology into your daily life and your daily processes, and of course communication skills, because you are in the middle of the hurricane. Information is flowing, information is created, and then you kind of need to grab everything and try to put it together. Not only the data or the numbers and the project material itself, but also people, because ultimately this data is like the fault is not the data. The fault, the black sheep in the field is not the bad data. Is people, is we humans generating this bad data most of the times.
Yes.
So it's about being able to address, to identify these issues, but also to address them with people, to bring them all together, collaborate in the team, and contribute for the landscape to be peaceful, the cosmos to be organized from the chaos, and that requires a lot of communication skills, resilience for those that is sometimes a little challenging, of course, to try to to try people to understand why this is valuable and not just one more requirement in the checklist to tick. But in terms of resilience, also to learn and constantly embrace change, to adjust to the new technologies. How do you envision the automation and the change in the next 10 years, for example, for this role for information management?
Automation and AI is already changing our industry. And we just, both of us mentioned the correlation between people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
And data is, of course, binding it all together. Machine learning will, in a way, is also, again, already transforming. But in the next 10 years, I think really we will see some progress in this shifting from automating so many of these tasks, boring tasks that we really
no valuable tasks,
yes, time consuming, so we can work with something more fun. So our roles will evolve in a way that it will be even more interesting to be an information manager. We still have a lot of tasks that we would want to have some automation in.
It sounds like it is a canvas, but it's still a little white, and it sounds very interesting that it's gonna be a professional role that is gonna be very close to construction, but also very close to humans, to teams that requires or will bring a lot of value and will bring the team together. But also it will play a huge role on ensuring that the data is of good quality, can be used, and eventually can actually be utilized in a more technological way by applying AI and technology and readable data and data we can trust. So it seems that you, Andrijana, and all the other information managers out there, and the information managers to be, which I hope more than one got inspired to pursue this career or to consider it as a professional path. You have a huge work ahead. So thank you very much. Very interesting. I learned a lot about your role, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.